Hey guys, how's it going? This is going to be a video going through all of the ascendancies that they have announced, and we're going to go ahead and just look through them, and I'm going to kind of not go from node to node, but more so do an overview of what the ascendancy does and what recommendations or theories that I have. I guess really recommendations isn't the right word. And actually on that note, anybody who is posting a guide promising the world, I mean, come on. Let's be real. It's a new game. None of us know anything. And here's the thing. You know what? Hang on. Give me a second. I gotta bring this up. Editing will skip this, but I gotta bring this up. Okay, here we go. So I was very curious what this was going to be as far as like ascendancy points, because this is Ziggy D's video, Ascendancies Explained, and I was like, ooh, I don't really care about the tree. Cool, there's a note on it that says instant reload that is 40% increased crossbow reload speed. Okay, that's kind of a cool node. We'll see the tree when we see the tree. We'll see the skills when we see the skills, right? I am, as far as once I figure out what the ascendancy I want is, then I might be more inclined to delve into it. Well, this happened right here. I got stopped before I even got started at looking up, little skill tree videos where people's mousing over stuff, because this right here, Ziggy D was on a more recent build. This is either right before the announcement trailer or right after when he was getting footage for this video. And, you know, I was like, wait a minute. He just moused over a node on the Gimling Legionnaire, which, now that we know, doesn't look like that anymore. So, like the bottom left node is just gone, and well, it's kind of moved up to the one of the top right ones. So yeah. So I was like, okay, let's see what this is. And also, things have already moved around. So point being, anything that you've seen that is old, that was from the LA event, or that was from, recent videos, probably even if there's leaks from that stress test, because apparently they were doing a stress test on like the 3rd or something, and there's been leaks from that. Stuff from there has probably already changed. So if you're trying to delve into the numbers and really figure things out, assuming that you're going to have any amount of, like, if you look at the stats here, there's 497 life, 526 honor on his thing, and 29 energy shield. Assuming that you can calculate what the energy shield is going to be. I mean, now life, we kind of know that how it scales. Sure, there is some numbers you can get close, but any build promising the world or some crazy survivability or whatever, let's just wait and see. All I'm saying. Because here's what happened to me right here. Enhance, enhance, enhance. After I saw that, 1% increased fishing line strength. As soon as I saw that, I just had to get up and walk away. I had to get up out of my chair. And I realized that I do not need to start delving into the numbers, that I don't need to look at what anything is, and I need to wait to feel it out while playing the game. Hopefully you've done the same thing. I wanted to make a video talking about this and do a whole little skit with it the moment that this happened. The moment that I got to this point in this video and paused it and saw fishing line strength. And at that point, this is a recent build. So any stats, energy shield, as far as the numbers that some people have been posting on some nodes, especially, you can't avoid a lot of screenshots. Some of those numbers look crazy, increased energy shield. Are we going to have those numbers, or are they going to be, a fourth of what they are? And even then, that's still a lot of energy shield. So you know, if you're gonna start calculating numbers, like you've went too deep. You went too deep, and I think you're doing a disservice to yourself. So, with that said, I'm going to talk about the ascendancies because here's the thing. The reason why I really wanted to know these is this is your most permanent choice. This is your most permanent choice. And the thing is, with this being your most permanent choice, you have to really know what you're going to get into to do this. So, overall, you know, we now have the info on the ascendancies. That's what I want to know, and that's what I'm basing my main decisions on. And it's all just theory. It's all who knows what's going to happen, but here's my hopium is mainly the big thing. So anything that I'm like, maybe, ignite this, poison that, bleed this, whatever, cool down something, anything, time freeze, anything like that, infinite instant mana leech or something, any of those mechanics, anything I say is hopium, and I have no clue what I'm talking about. So, with that out of the way, let's get into these, because that moment right there definitely helped me, I think, not get lost in the sauce of numbers and just wasting my time watching videos to find not useful information. So here we go. Let's get into the ascendancies. I just wanted to point that out. So anyway, let's get started. Getting into the Storm Reaver as the first one, we're going to go Sorceress, and we're just going down the list here on the page. So, Scouring Winds, mainly just exposure. That's just damage, 20%. As far as most things go on here, if it's about a 20%, that's good for damage multiplier. If it's 40%, that's better. That's pretty great, actually. And then if it's anything above 40%, that's a really good node. So moving on, this could be a whole build around it, just doing crits and having the storms actually do the damage. We're gonna have to wait to see what the damage is, but this has potential to be a whole build on its own with the elemental storms, because the next node after it gives a ton of more, 150% more cooldown recovery rate. If we can pair this with any cooldown recovery rate just generically, if it's on the tree or if it's on gear, this could be very strong, and this could have a very low cooldown, and as long as you crit frequently enough, you're just pumping these storms out, and this could be a crazy amount of damage. I would assume this kind of works like, what is it? Is it the blade? It's Blade Storm, I believe, where you have the sand blades or the blood blades, and these kind of stack up. I'm assuming it's kind of one of those things. You'll have a bunch of these storms, stacking up underneath, and that could be really cool. Other than that, the next four are essentially either shock or chill, and shock is just damage. That's kind of cool. Looks pretty decent. The chill one though is that because there's a maximum of 35%. Is that a maximum between the two, or is that a maximum of 70% for the two chills? And that is kind of crazy. If that's the case, then you could get 70% action speed reduction, which is huge defense in that regard. And then finally, you have the 8, 9, and 10, which 10, we'll go ahead and talk about that one. 40% of elemental damage taken recouped as energy shield. Recoup is now 8 seconds by default. We already know that one. But, elemental damage, kind of very specific there. And as energy shield. So it kind of depends on if you're doing probably CI build or something like that. That node is kind of very situational for defense, but could be really good. And finally, the Arcane Surge. And this is going to be the thing. This is why this is probably going to be the premier Archmage class, or one of the two. And it is insane looking. Your Arcane Surge now gives 10% more cast speed and 20% more mana regen is what Arcane Surge does. With Force of Will, this increases the effect of Arcane Surge per 15 maximum mana. And even just thinking, again, what I said earlier about numbers, just looking at what we had from the Ziggy D video, just a small amount of mana, that's actually a pretty good amount of effect for more cast speed and more regen. This is looking insane for things like Archmage. So yeah, if you want to go Archmage, you want to do crazy Archmage spells, this is definitely going to be the class to do it, for at least the most obvious class to do it at least. So yeah, overall, I think this is going to be one of the more consistent, good classes that you can go if you want a spellcaster. Now, technically, they did say in one of the things that Sorceress does had the least amount of satisfaction, so we'll have to see how it feels with the feedback that they got from people playtesting. But overall, I think this one's going to be very consistent. I definitely will be making a Archmage Stormweaver at some point because this just sounds fun and it just seems like it's a very obvious good choice. The question then, other than the Archmage with the Arcane Surge, do I go Shocks? Do I go the Elemental Storm? How do I then go about playing the class? If I get enough damage, maybe I go the chills and do big chills. So anyway, that is the Stormweaver. Moving on to the Chronomancer, and this is going to be my probably second character. I'll go ahead and mention that now because of the first two nodes that we're going over. Skills have a 33% chance to not consume a cooldown when used, and then Time Snap resets your cooldowns. That just sounds insane. There's obviously the Hammer of the Gods being a 24-second cooldown skill with a lot of damage that people have, definitely linked and shown off being a big cooldown heavy hit. If there's more of those, that's my second build. I want to have like 5 cooldown skills, go in with those, spam 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then hit Time Snap, repeat, do something like that, and that right there definitely gives me that option. So that is obviously one of the easiest like combos you could think of, but at the same time, that sounds like that build could be a ton of fun. You're gambling to then do big slams over and over and over again, or big spells. So hopefully there's some really good cooldown spells, and if I have to do certain attacks, then just do cooldown attacks at the same time. Next, we have the Time Freeze and the Temporal Rift. So, Zawaldo, you can just go ahead and stop enemies. Really cool skill. Very unique. Definitely want to play around with that. I don't know if that would be something I would take, but, definitely a really cool thing. Then, I don't like pendulum skills. I don't like anything that has like 4 seconds uptime, 8 seconds downtime kind of thing. But 50% more cast speed is pretty insane. So if there is, it just depends on the tempo of the fights. So if it feels very good, this could be absolutely disgusting. Otherwise, kind of meh. Other than that, we have the enemies in your presence are slowed. Decent defense. 30% of damage taken recouped his life. Decent, but with the next node after it, you get 4 seconds recoup rather than 8. So definitely better recoup than just the base. So this brings it back into line with base recoup in PoE 1. So that's definitely pretty strong for a defensive layer. Other than that, nothing too crazy, but definitely some generic things. And, I'll go ahead and mention this here. I think they've done a really good job with keeping things not essentially pigeonholed into a thing. They've done great for, like, you could definitely make a minion build out of this. You could definitely do, just pretty much pick something, get your flavor, put something with it, mix and match. Really good. Very well done. Next, we have the Titan. And the Titan is definitely something I'm going to play because I want to do big slams. So, first, we got 50% more armor. Pretty self-explanatory, and that's from equipped body armor. Earthbreaker. This is the Aftershock thing. So, we already saw that. So, you get Aftershocks. That's really cool. 3, every second slam skill you use yourself is ancestrally boosted. That's just pretty cool damage. 20% more damage and area of effect. Really nice. Then we have 4 and 5 here. So you get the inventory space, which is cool. But the reason why the inventory space doesn't have any character power is number 5 gives 50% increased effect of small passive. This is Might of the Meek without the negative for your entire skill tree. Just that is an insane amount of power. And just looking at anything from PoE 1, if you could just have 50% on your entire small passive nodes, that is just disgusting. That is insane. And here it is. Yeah, that the power from that node for defense, especially, not even just offense, but character power. This is the strongest node I think on the ascendancy list. Period. Like, not even, we don't have the numbers. We can't even look at the numbers yet. But I have to say, that's probably the strongest node in this entire video that we'll talk about right there. And it does take 4 points, but that might enable you to do any build. The Titan actually might be a jack of all trades with that one node. Then if you need defense, you got the armor from body armor, and then we got 8 for max life. We already know about that one. Then you have the crushing blows and the more damage from heavy stuns. Those are definitely going to be strong. From what we've seen in the playtest and stuff, looks like stunning is going to be a very powerful tool. And if you can do this very regularly and also get these heavy stuns, it's going to be huge and might actually make, at some point, some fights, mapping, bossing, just a little more, probably not trivial, but definitely easier than some classes. Again, though, you are melee, so that's a trade-off. Next, we have the Warbringer. This one is very interesting because there's definitely some obvious builds with totems that you can do. There's this crazy armor break thing, and then the next node is you can actually break armor below 0, which we don't know exactly what that's going to do for the numbers, but that could be insane if you can actually get some big negatives on enemies. That could be just a huge damage build in itself. Then we have Encase in Jade, and this could be one of the, it's either going to be one of the most overpowered nodes or it's going to be kind of whatever. This could trivialize certain mechanics from bosses, especially when we get to like the pinnacle bosses and doing the in-game bosses. This could be crazy because you could just literally just say nope to a mechanic, and being able to do that is absolutely insane. From there, we have Answered Call, which the meme monkey from the totem in the video where it just ran into a tree and did absolutely nothing. Hopefully they're better than that. Hopefully they're still around, and but it also says if the totem that summoned the minion dies, then the spirit will too. So that depends on how tanky your totems are. But, being able to put a bunch of totems up and get a bunch of these minions out at the same time, that sounds pretty cool. So just having like a totem build that also is a minion build, I love these sounding combinations because it just says minion there on it. So it is a minion skill. So you scale it with minions and you scale totems at the same time. That just sounds, again, that sounds really cool just in general. Then we have the Wooden Wall, which is the point after it. 20% of damage is taken from your totems. It's a really good defensive layer. And then we got some block stuff. So block looks like it's going to be insanely powerful. Now the question is, the node number 7 really, is can block damage from all hits with shield while shield is not raised. So that's not using the active block, but that means essentially, I think, because they have like a little red flash on the unblockable hits from bosses, I would assume that means you can randomly block unblockable hits. That's insanely powerful. That's crazy. Then we have the Corpse Warcry thing. There has been a build around that in PoE 1, so this could be very strong here in PoE 2 as well, and just ignoring the Warcry cooldown, so you just yell a lot and explode corpses. Pretty cool. As long as you have a good way to spawn them, this could be a really cool build combo. Deadeye. So, a friend of mine was really looking at this, so this is how I know this about Rain of Arrows. Rain of Arrows apparently already got nerfed from some of the leaks, but 30% chance that you gain all frenzies. Cool, that's typical. Benefits from consuming a frenzy charge is doubled. And Rain of Arrows had like arrows per frenzy charge that was consumed. And when you consume frenzy charges at all, you get like 100% arrows. That ended up being a lot of arrows. Who knows what we're actually going to get, but that still sounds like a combo you could still do. Anything else, though, like that's just one example. So that just seems insanely powerful. Who knows what we can combine with frenzies, but I can't wait to see some of the other skills that might have consumes frenzy charges, because 50% of the time is pretty good. I'm just saying, you're coin flipping when you're doing crazy damage, and then you could be doing good damage. So that's pretty huge. Accuracy penalty at distance. We're going to have to see what this is. If this feels really bad naturally and there isn't a way to get good enough accuracy, that's a big oof. That's one of the nodes that concerns me. I know there's also been a node shown where it's like the weapon swap speed on the tree. Hopefully that's more of a, hey, it feels good, but it could feel even better. So there is certain things with certain totem placement that having more speed, for instance, if you're doing a ballista build in PoE 1, it doesn't feel that bad to place them, but having a bit more placement speed makes them feel insanely smooth. So hopefully it already feels good for like weapon swapping, and this accuracy thing doesn't just feel bad without a node like this. Pathfinder also has a movement thing, and I worry about that too, because the fact that nodes like this exist means it's either just feels bad or feels very uncomfortable at the very, or slightly uncomfortable at the very least. Then point blank, far shot, pretty self-explanatory. Endless munitions, extra projectile, really cool stuff. Apply additional mark could be really cool. We got to see what the marks actually do. And then Tailwind, and the defensive part of Tailwind is in the Deadeye, just like in PoE 1. So this feels really good for defense. And the question is how much speed are you going to get from Tailwind? That's to be seen, because this is definitely different wording. But at the very least, that's a huge defensive layer and feels very good if you need to take advantage of it. Moving on to the Pathfinder, though. I already talked about these two, so here's the speed stuff. Your speed is unaffected by slow, 30% less movement penalty when using skills while moving. Now, this could be seen in two ways. Right now, being able to move and use a skill, period, is really cool. But 30% less, that actually is a significant increase to get you closer to your base speed. So this could actually just be a really cool part of the class rather than it just feeling bad in general normally. Which, since for PoE 1 players, we don't get to move. So this is just going to feel better anyway, and this would just make it feel even more. So this one doesn't scare me as bad when I started thinking about it that way, but it's definitely one of those concerning nodes. Other than that, let's go ahead and talk about 5 skill points. Depends on what you need, and depends on what we got on the tree. So we got to see the tree to know how strong this node is, but this could be insanely powerful. Then we have, and also considering that you get like, I think, haven't they confirmed it's 20 respec for the weapon swap points, the weapon swap spec points, whatever that is? That's a fourth. It's pretty good. Overwhelming toxicity. No. Brew. We'll go with the brew. So here's a bunch of concoctions. We'll have to wait and see what these are. Poison concoction might be a build. Bleeding concoction might be a build. Explosive probably. And then you get like shattering and the shock flask essentially. So lightning exposure. So these are easy ways to, it's either going to be just easy ways to get exposure, a good poison build, or a good bleed build hopefully. So these are probably just going to be a whole build in general, whichever one you pick. From there, we have the flash charges gained and the life flask, the enduring life flask, pretty much. So that's really cool. As long as you just time it right, you can keep your life flask going. Depending on what happens, if there's a way to keep getting enough charges by the end of your life flask, then you have an infinite life flask. This is insanely powerful in PoE 1. And if you can do the same thing in PoE 2, That node is going to be awesome for defense. Then we have also, especially with one life flask, I'm assuming it's going to be really powerful as well. So if that's the case, insane defense with that. Then we have the poison stuff, poison prolif, and double poisons. So when I first saw this and reacted to this, I thought it meant more that you could double, like there was a poison cap essentially. Now, kind of looking back at it, double the number of poisons you can inflict on enemies. So maybe it's something kind of like a last epoch where if you have like 100% poison chance, you get one poison. Or then if you have 400% poison chance, you get 4 poisons. So maybe it's something like that. So if you have like the ability to put 8 poisons with one hit, maybe that's how it works in PoE 2. So that's kind of how I've been reading that now. The main question is can you get enough duration to really beat this penalty? Because that's a pretty harsh penalty otherwise. And you're going to have to put a lot of poisons to actually balance out where that actually is going to be for damage. Then we have the Witch. This one could be one of the strongest classes in the game, I think. Again, complete theory, random speculation here. But one thing we didn't know is that this actually stacks your life double. So you essentially get double your health bar if you overflow to max. So that's really cool. Now, does that count for the crit down here? Who knows? But Spell Leech sounds just really powerful just to have just 10% spell damage leached his life. So really cool. We don't know exactly how useful this curse infinite duration is, but that could be nice. If you want to do bleeding with spells or just bleeding period, that sounds really cool. And elemental damage contributes to bleeding magnitude. That also just sounds really awesome. So I'm really curious to see if you can get some cool bleed spell thing going on. Then we have Gore Spike, which these two are the crit nodes. It depends on how easy it is to get crit on spells. Depends on how useful this number 6 is. But hopefully, if I do a Blood Mage, I'm going to go 1, of course, because you have to. Probably 2. And then if the Bleed thing sounds cool, I'll probably do Bleed. And then I don't know what else I'm going to go after that. Probably the Progenesis Flask in a Ascendancy point, because that's insane. Otherwise, though, if I'm doing a crit build, I won't have that, and I'll probably take 5, and then, well, probably the Progenesis Flask in a Ascendancy point, because that's just insane. Then we have the Gore Spike, as far as it goes, it did get nerfed from what we saw, so now it's 40 life instead of 20. This is still an insane amount of crit damage, so that's really cool. Then we have, I already talked about the crit. Progenesis Flask. I know I've mentioned it twice now, or 3 times, or 4. That's insane. Definitely going to be taking that no matter what build I play on the Blood Mage. That's just crazy. 8 depends on how much energy shield you can get on a body armor. So that one's kind of up in the air. And there's so much else I want that this is probably not going to be enough defense or damage to actually make me want to get this. Unless I can get some leech somewhere else, I don't need the leech, then I might take Crimson Power. But again, having curses be infinite might also be another thing that I want to take. So there's that. Infernalist. This is going to be my league starter. So there's that. And there's so many options and so many crazy things that I think I can do with this that there's some build here for sure. Now, the plan I want to do is definitely take advantage of Demon Form and do something with Ignites and hopefully Minion Ignites. And we don't know how Ignite works, or maybe there's been a leak, but I have no clue. I have not seen it. But one thing I hope they fix in PoE 2 is in PoE 1, if you have Burning Arrow and you're playing Ignite, and somebody else has Burning Arrow and they're playing Ignite, then what happens is if you Ignite and then your friend ignites, only one of your ignites is going to do damage. It's whoever did the most ignite damage, which ignite is bigger, is going to be the one doing the damage. That doesn't feel intuitive, and that really sucks because that means you can't play with a friend who wants to do an ignite build and you want to do an ignite build. You have to do some weird thing where you're like debuffing their fire resist and you want to do a burn build instead, so you're doing burning damage. So hopefully they actually balance it around this to where your minions can ignite, and each individual source of an ignite can deal damage for that ignite. And the reason why I think this could be balanced, and actually work is because one thing, this Hellhound says ignite, and also summon raging spirits aren't going to do that much big of a hit to ignite anyway. So that would be really cool if they set it up like that. But that's going to be my ideal situation, is that I can do demon form, ignite myself, and have minions that can also ignite. In that case, I'm going to be going 5, 7, 8, and probably 10. And depending on how good the Hellhound is or not, and if I'm defensive enough, maybe swapping to 9 instead of 10. Now, hopefully this isn't the case, but I might have to go 6 as well to make demon form feel good. Hopefully that's not the case as well. Then I might have to drop something like the Hellhound. Other than that, the kind of like, whoa, these are crazy, what can we come up with nodes is 1 through 4. So if you wanted to do something low life, you reserve 20% of your life, 25% of your life 3 times, and you get maximum spirit per health. That's 25. Maximum mana per 6 maximum life, and maximum energy shield per 8 maximum life. So really interesting life stack to get other stats type situation here. Altered Flesh, if this is useful, it's really cool. It just depends on what's in the game and what we're finding we need to deal with. Like, can you get other sources of conversion to fire damage? This means you can just stack fire and chaos res and deal with most things. So this could be a really cool defensive node. Might be something that's just situational for certain bosses if you're doing certain bossing strats. Other than that, that's about it for that one. Hellhound, I'm guessing, is going to be really strong, and that's going to be probably the first ascendancy point I take. Even though demon form is going to be fun, it's probably going to be just a burst of damage, and that's about it. I'll probably take it second, unless I'm having mana problems. Then I'm going to take Pyromantic Pact second, and then I'll go demon form. From there, though, the Hellhound hopefully is going to be doing a lot of damage, and it's a lot of defense with the 20% of damage from hits taken from the Hellhound before me. And then finally, we have Grinning Immolation, which is essentially Righteous Fire without being Righteous Fire. So become ignited when you deal a critical hit, and it's critical hit Righteous Fire is essentially what it is. Take 15% of your life and energy shield as fire damage per second. 30% more critical damage bonus. And the other thing I've found with the demon form from what I looked up is I saw that it gives like plus spells and 1% of your life per second that stacks each second. So it looks like you might get about 10 seconds to 15 seconds of demon form before you're going to have to turn it off. And if you can actually deal with 10% of your life a second, 6 just makes you just have demon form permanently, essentially, which could be really cool. So that's going to be my league starter. I think this one has the most high risk, high reward potential for some crazy builds. But they could be a little weak to start, or, so either way, though, I think Ignite with some minions and Demon Form probably will be at least decent. So I'm going to start there, farm some stuff, and then maybe go with my Chronomancer build. Anyway, so there's that. Mercenary, Witch Hunter. We have just straight damage for the most part and straight defense. This one's pretty straightforward. We'll go ahead and talk about the sorcery ward. It's, you give up some armor and evasion, and you essentially gain the elemental damage shield from the elementalist currently, and then you get a bigger effect, faster recovery speed. Explodey chance. This could be kind of interesting. Other than that, you have more damage for concentration. Now, the one thing with this is sometimes it's really cool that, Shaper isn't going into his iframe, but also it makes his hammer harder to dodge. So, depending on how some of these timings work, now you're not technically slowing them, you're just lowering their cast speed, essentially. Some timings on this can be very weird. So, this is going to vary depending on how this feels, and it can make some boss fight mechanics actually harder when they're not as consistent. And if you learn the fights on a witch hunter, it might be weird when you're playing something else. Other than that, though, decimating strike, being able to do 5 to 30% of a boss's health in just, well, hits against full life enemies, period. 5 and 30% is insane. So just while clearing, that's insane. For bossing, that's insane. Culling strike is also a huge amount, as we can see there on magic monsters, 20%. And then normal enemies is 30%. So you have a chance to deal 60% just outright for normal monsters. So if you can deal the other 40 in between, you just one-shot everything. So Witch Hunter could be actually insane. Oh yeah, and then the 20 passes becoming weapon skill points, that really gives you a chance to do some really cool respecs for different combos. Gimling Legionnaire. This one is probably the closest thing to a Scion, Jack of all trades, Master of none. And we'll start at the beginning. Quality could be absolutely disgusting with what they did with the quality changes in PoE 1 recently. That is massive and looks like it could be crazy. Then we have +1 to all skills. That really doesn't seem that good. Overall, it's, yeah, I mean, compared to some of the stuff we've seen for plus skills on things, that doesn't look that powerful. So probably, maybe they need to up it by 1 or 2, something like that. Maybe that's a little too much considering the rest of the stuff in it, but yeah, +1 to all skills doesn't seem like that crazy of a thing. Then we have 30 less cost of skills. This, if this works with spirit cost and reservations, that node is absolutely insane, and this might be the best minion character ascendancy to actually go for, because then you get on 4 3 additional skill slots, so you can reserve even more stuff. Then, so that's the theory on that one. If that works like that, that could be absolutely insane. Then, of course, the 3 additional skills, just having more skills is nice. Depending on what kind of build you're going for, that could be huge. And the other node that I think is probably one of the most powerful here is the 5, where you can have 2 copies of the support gem. So let's just say you're doing the minion idea. Well, that means you have 2 really heavy-hitting single-target minion setups because they're using the same supports to do the same thing. So that could be really huge in that sense. There is definitely some skill combos that you're going to want to have to be able to double up and get essentially double damage for with this kind of node. I've kind of grown more to think that number 6 is a bait, but if we need max res, really good. And then attribute requirements being not a thing, definitely a cool thing early, or even to make a build work a little bit. And then inherent bonuses from int, strength, and dex are doubled. That's really cool in the sense if you are doing a stacking build for, say, strength, that's a lot of health. But for the other stuff, I guess int giving more mana, that could be really cool. But overall, this node for going all the way to 4 points in doesn't feel that good in my opinion. So I think if I play a Gimling Legionnaire, pretty much on every build, I'm going to have 1, 3, 4, and 5. I think that's just going to be the builds, period. Because hopefully you can kind of solve the resistances in other ways, and you don't have to use 6 to solve your resistances. Then we have the Monk. So, Invoker. This actually looks insane with the like waves that it shoots out, which I believe are the down here with the 9, which is also triggered on crit. This actually having these waves come out, so you're kind of like wild striking things when you crit. That looks like it could be really fun with like a flicker strike. Monk is probably the last class I'm going to play out of all of these. And other than that, it has, we'll just go from the top, essentially kind of like the trickster thing of, only this is spirit for every evasion on body armor and spirit for every, or sorry, energy shield, and then for every 15 evasion on equipped body armor. So that could be a lot of spirit. So who knows? Maybe there's some kind of like some minion thing there with this kind of class setup. And at the same time, hopefully they've nailed it to where you can do a minion build where your minions do good damage and you do good damage with your stuff. If they've done that, again, that's kind of my infernalist idea. If they really nail that, I think that is awesome because that's one of my problems with minion builds. I wouldn't mind having minion builds, but I also want to have, I want to be pumping too. I'm just saying. I don't want to have to just stand back and let my minions do everything. It's cool that you can do that, but I also would love to make a build that I can get in there and feel just as powerful. Meditate, having to stop channels to recharge energy shield, and you can overcharge it, which is nice, but that feels a little weird. Maybe if you're actually, I don't know how effective this is going to feel in a boss fight. It depends on how fast you meditate to get your stuff back. Because otherwise, this is going to just feel really bad if you just have to be like, please don't hit me. Oh, you hit me. I'm meditate again. You know, like that could feel really weird. But who knows? Maybe it's great. We'll have to see on that one. Evasion rating also grants physical damage reduction. That's pretty cool. There's not too many sources of reduction as far as what we've seen on ascendancy so far, and reduction in PoE1 is very hard to come by. And it depends on how much the physical damage reduction actually is here. Is it based on the same, like, would your evasion chance be physical damage reduction? So yeah, we'll have to see how effective that node is, but that sounds really cool. Then we have another cold and lightning setup. They're pretty much the exact same thing, just 10% damages extra, and then you get shock and shocking ground, or freezing and chilling ground. Unbound Avatar is essentially the Warden node that we have, from what we understand, so that looks pretty cool. Then you have meta skills gain 35% more energy, so if there's any increases, that would multiply, which would be really cool, meaning you can get like cast on crit and things coming out a lot faster with that. That could be a really cool thing, especially if you're doing like a cast on crit and you have like number 9 where you're getting the wild strike waves coming out when you crit. That could be a really cool build. I do plan on doing something around like the meta stuff with like a cast on crit with the melee crit with elemental expression, doing like flicker strike or something. I definitely want to try to do a build somewhere around that. Other than that though, crits ignore non-negative enemy monster elemental resistance. In some ways, this is better than actually the Inquisitor Templar node currently in PoE1. Finally, Acolyte of Chayula. I think finally, right? Yeah. Finally, here we go. This one also has the potential to be insane depending on how Leech works with Mana Leech and how monsters have Leech resistance. Mana Leech is instant. Any Leech being instant is insane. I could only assume we have instant Leech Volpack back on the tree or something equivalent somewhere, because for them to just go this far, we've already seen that Mind Over Matter is 100%. So mana is just your health bar and you leech it instantly. That's Mana Volpack right there. That's crazy. So unless there's something, this is either going to be broken, and if there's Chaos Inoculation involved, that's crazy. And even if there's not, then you can get 10% of maximum Chaos Res from node number 3. So if you're doing CI, you could go node 2, and then it essentially mimics your Mana Leech effects on Energy Shield, which is also crazy. If that's also instant leech, that's dumb, but sure. And then, so you do CI in 2, not CI in 3. Now 4 is just a generic damage thing. It's kind of cool, but probably not something you're going to really take unless you just need that extra damage. 5 is absolutely absurd. Each of those flames, now that we know what they give, is insane numbers. That can stack up to 10 times for the chaos damage, so that would be 70% of damage as chaos, which is just disgusting. And being able to double the time, I would assume you can actually then get these flames fast enough to actually hit that 10 stack cap. That just looks good. I definitely am going to be trying something around this later. And this is probably going to be one of those that I might just wait to see if people say that the Mana Leech is crazy and that the Into the Breach is crazy. That could be really cool. So overall, I think it's definitely a 1-2 or a 1-3 and a 5-6 angle here. there is another world where the 1 and 2 and 1 and 3 aren't that useful. And then it's probably a 5, 6, and then maybe a 4, and 3. And if not, then maybe going into the darkness stuff and seeing how that goes. It does look like it could be some really good damage with the 8, but if you just take 7, you just get darkness. Can you use darkness to reserve things? And like, what does that actually do? So if you just take 7, that just replaces it. So what does darkness do by default? That's going to be the real question there. If darkness does something by default, that's really cool. Otherwise, that just seems a little weird for node number 7. And then to 8, though, is where it actually gains damage. And then 50% reduced darkness reservation duration, because it doesn't seem like darkness actually reduces any damage you take, but it just gets reserved when you take life or energy shield. And if it's, what is that, like 100, so you're close to like 500, 600. If you max out to level 100, that's, not too bad. But 600, between 500 and 600 when you're high level, if you can use that as like spirit, and it's essentially guaranteed spirit that you can reserve, that's actually insane, because then you would actually, by reserving it, you won't get the damage. So taking 8 doesn't really do anything. And essentially 7 is just makes it so that you are guaranteed to get some spirit, essentially, without having to invest in spirit. So that would be a really powerful node. But again, it just depends on if you can actually use darkness as a resource, because not having any stats on what darkness is really feels like it's either just an alternate spirit resource, or it is that's kind of just a useless node outright. So anyway, guys, that's all the ascendancies. Let me know which one you're going in the comments down below. What is your favorite? Let me know any of your ideas as well in the comments. I'll definitely be checking those out. I will, again, be going Infernalist and then probably into Chronomancer, because then I can actually look at all the skills and figure out what I want to do with the Chronomancer, rather than just completely going in blind and then maybe being like, oh, there's not enough cool skills for me to use this with. Well, darn it, I don't have a alternative. And it seems like Infernalist has so many options that I can find something, hopefully, that I enjoy playing with that one at the very least. So anyway, guys, that'll be it for this one. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Usual stuff in the description. Twitch, Twitter, Discord, Instagram, TikTok, all that. But have a good one. I should be live on Twitch and YouTube if I can get that set up in time. But at the very least, I'll be live on Twitch. So have a good one. Thanks for watching. Peace!